Do you believe a single whisper can change someone's life forever? Do you think the smallest voice in the room can reach the deepest part of a human heart? That day, inside a crowded McDonald's, something happened that neither fame nor fortune could ever explain. Keanu Reeves had entered quietly, wearing a simple gray hoodie and sunglasses that barely hid his tired eyes. He was coming from a late-night charity event that had gone longer than expected. His body was exhausted, but his mind was heavier. For weeks he had been thinking about life's strange timing, about how kindness often appears from unexpected places. That morning he just wanted coffee, maybe a burger, and a quiet corner away from flashing cameras. The restaurant buzzed with laughter and noise. Children shouted orders to their parents. The smell of fries filled the air, and somewhere in the corner, a small child sat alone, clutching a worn-out toy car. The boy's name was Liam. He was 5 years old, with dark curls and eyes that seemed older than his years. His mother stood at the counter, speaking softly to the cashier, her eyes red as if she had been crying for hours. Keanu noticed them without trying to. He had that quiet awareness of people around him, the same awareness that made his on-screen characters so real. When he saw Liam sitting alone, tapping his toy car on the table with small, careful movements, something inside him paused. He didn't know why, but he felt drawn to that table, like the air around it carried a story waiting to be told. He took his tray and sat at a distance, trying not to disturb anyone. He unwrapped his sandwich slowly, lost in thought. Fame had taught him silence, patience, and the beauty of watching life unfold. And yet beneath that calm he carried unspoken grief. Memories of people he had loved and lost, moments that fame could never heal. As he ate, he heard the soft sound of footsteps, tiny ones. He looked up and saw Liam standing beside his table. The boy's hand trembled slightly, his toy car held tight against his chest. He stared at Keanu for a moment before whispering something almost too soft to hear. "Are you the man who helps sad people feel better?" Keanu froze. His heart caught in his throat. He didn't know how to answer that. The child's voice was so honest, so untouched by the world's noise, that it broke something open inside him. He managed a small smile. "I don't know, kid," he said softly. "I try." Liam looked down, twisting the toy car in his fingers. "My mom says people like you don't come here. She says famous people eat in big places." Keanu glanced toward the counter, where Liam's mother stood with her back turned, her shoulders shaking slightly. It wasn't hard to see she was struggling. Maybe it was money. Maybe it was something deeper. He didn't want to intrude, but the boy's honesty pulled him in. "Sometimes we just want a burger," Keanu said gently, "and maybe some peace." Liam smiled shyly and then, without warning, leaned closer. He cupped his small hands around his mouth and whispered something directly into Keanu's ear. The whisper was only a few words, but they hit him like lightning. He didn't move for several seconds. His eyes softened, his hands frozen midair. Whatever the child said, it wasn't something a 5-year-old should have known. And then Liam smiled, as if he had just done something very brave, and ran back to his mother's side. Keanu sat still, staring at the empty space where the boy had stood. He could hear his own heartbeat louder than the restaurant noise. For the first time in months, he felt his eyes sting. It was not sadness exactly. It was something deeper, a mix of memory, loss, and strange comfort. Because the words that boy whispered were the same words his own younger sister used to tell him before she passed away years ago. He tried to shake it off, but it lingered. He looked again at Liam's mother, who was now wiping her eyes while the cashier spoke kindly to her. Something told him she wasn't just tired. She was at the edge of breaking. Sandra Bullock, meanwhile, had no idea what was happening. She was across town filming an interview, unaware that a small twist of fate was already unfolding that would soon draw her into a story that neither she nor Keanu could have ever predicted. Back inside the McDonald's, Keanu stood up and quietly walked toward the counter. He paid for his meal and then asked the cashier to add something, 2 meals to go, extra fries, and a small toy car from the kids section. He asked them to deliver it anonymously to the table where Liam and his mother sat after he left. But just as he turned to leave, he heard the boy's voice again. "Mr. Keanu," Liam called out. Keanu stopped. My dad said heroes never wear capes, but I think they eat burgers. Everyone nearby laughed softly, but Keanu didn't. He smiled, the kind that hides tears. He gave a small nod and walked out into the cold morning air, his heart heavier and lighter all at once. Outside, he leaned against his motorcycle, staring at the cloudy sky. For years, he had carried grief quietly, never talking about it, never wanting the world's pity. But that whisper, those few simple words, felt like a message from somewhere beyond understanding. What Keanu didn't know was that this moment would soon connect him back to someone from his past, and that someone would be Sandra Bullock. Because later that night, when Sandra received a message about a small charity video that had gone viral, she would see something in it that would stop her heart. She would see Keanu, sitting quietly in a McDonald's, smiling at a child. Unaware that cameras had captured the entire exchange, the video would spread, not because of fame, but because of one tiny whisper that carried more emotion than any speech ever could. And that whisper, those few words from a 5-year-old, would begin a chain of events that would change both Keanu and Sandra forever. As Keanu started his bike and rode away, a gentle rain began to fall, washing the city in silver. Behind him, inside that small restaurant, the boy looked out the window and whispered again, as if to the wind. He'll find her soon. The lady from the movies. He has to. His mother frowned, confused by his words, but Liam only smiled. He didn't know why he said it. He just felt it. Like a secret he wasn't supposed to tell. And as the rain fell harder, far across the city, Sandra Bullock's phone buzzed, a notification that would pull her into the same story. Though she didn't know it yet, Sandra Bullock sat in her trailer, half lost in thought as her phone kept buzzing on the table. She had just finished a long interview and was preparing for another day of filming. The air outside was gray, heavy with clouds, the kind of weather that made her pause and breathe slower. She took a sip of her coffee and finally looked at her phone. The top notification was from her assistant, Claire. It read, "You have to see this video." "It's everywhere." Sandra frowned a little. She was used to seeing her name online, sometimes for projects, sometimes for things that didn't even happen. But when she opened the link, her breath caught in her throat. The screen showed a McDonald's. Nothing special at first, just a normal morning rush. And then the camera focused. It was Keanu, sitting alone, eating quietly, with that same calm expression he always had when he thought no one was watching. Sandra's lips curved into a small smile. She had always admired how grounded he remained, no matter where he was. But then, something shifted in the video. A small boy appeared beside Keanu, whispering something into his ear. The camera zoomed in slightly. Keanu froze, his eyes softening in a way Sandra had never seen before. The video ended with Keanu walking out, leaving the boy smiling. But what made it powerful was the caption written by the stranger who filmed it. The child said something only Keanu understood. He cried after leaving. Sandra felt a strange chill. She replayed the clip again and again, studying Keanu's face. She knew that look. It wasn't just surprise, it was recognition. Deep, emotional recognition. For a few moments, she sat still, remembering the man she had known for years. Their bond had always been quiet, full of mutual respect and warmth. He had been her friend through heartbreaks, success, and moments when the world felt too heavy. But in all that time, she had never seen him react like that. She decided to call him. The phone rang twice before his voice came through. Soft and familiar. "Hey, Sandra." "Hey," she said, trying to sound casual. But her tone betrayed her curiosity. "I just saw something online. Were you in a McDonald's this morning?" Keanu chuckled softly. "Guilty. And a little boy whispered something to you?" There was silence, long enough for her to realize she had touched something deeper. "Yeah," he said finally. "He said something I haven't heard in a very long time." "Can I ask what it was?" she asked gently. Keanu hesitated. He wasn't someone who liked to share pain. But with Sandra, silence always felt safe. She had that gift, the kind of listening that never demanded answers but invited truth. "He whispered the same words my sister used to tell me when she thought I was sad," he said. "She used to say the light never leaves you." It just hides until you remember where to look. Sandra's heart tightened. She remembered his sister, the one he lost years ago. She had heard him mention her once, briefly, when they were filming Speed. Even then, the pain had been quiet but visible in his eyes. "Oh, Keanu," she whispered. That's beautiful." "Yeah," he said, his voice barely a breath. But hearing it from a child I've never met, it felt like something more, like a message. They both fell silent, lost in thought. Then Sandra said softly, "Do you know who the boy was?" "No, but I think I should." Sandra hesitated. "Why?" "Because," he said after a pause, "sometimes the universe sends us reminders through strangers. I think that boy was one of them." Sandra smiled sadly. "You always find meaning in things others would miss. And you always help me see what I can't," he replied. That night, neither of them slept well. Keanu kept replaying the moment in his mind. The boy's whisper, his mother's tired eyes, the soft smile before he ran back. Something about it wouldn't leave him. Meanwhile, Sandra found herself scrolling through the comments on the viral video. Thousands of people had shared it, calling it the kindness moment. But among the noise, one comment stood out. It said, "That's my nephew Liam. He lost his dad last year. His mom's been struggling, but Liam says he met someone today who made him believe his dad's still watching." Sandra stared at the comment, her eyes widening. She immediately sent it to Keanu with a single line, "We can find them." The next morning, Keanu was already waiting outside a small cafe when Sandra arrived. She wore a black cap and simple clothes, blending into the crowd. They greeted each other with a quiet hug, the kind that says more than words ever could. "I can't believe we're doing this," Sandra said as they sat down. "Me neither," Keanu replied, smiling faintly, "but it feels right." They reached out to the person who had commented, and within hours they received a message back. It was from the boy's aunt, who confirmed that Liam and his mother lived just outside the city. She sent an address, along with a note. "Please be gentle with them. They've been through a lot." As Sandra read the message aloud, Keanu looked out the window. For years, he had helped countless people quietly, donating, visiting hospitals, supporting strangers. But this felt different. It felt personal. "Maybe this is more than coincidence," Sandra said softly. "Maybe it's connection," he nodded. "Yeah, maybe it's time I stop running from the past." Later that afternoon, they drove together through narrow streets lined with small houses and tall trees. The air was thick with the smell of rain and distant cooking. When they reached the address, Keanu turned off the engine and took a deep breath. Through the window, they could see Liam playing in a small front yard, his toy car racing through puddles. His mother sat nearby on the porch, watching him with tired eyes. "That's them," Sandra said quietly. Keanu nodded. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, he stepped out of the car. Sandra followed, her heart pounding. The boy looked up first. His face lit up with pure, innocent joy. "You came back," he said, dropping his toy car and running toward Keanu. Keanu knelt, catching the boy in a gentle hug. "Yeah, I came back." Liam smiled up at him. "I told Mommy you would." "I told her heroes always come back." His mother stood up, stunned, recognizing the man from the video. She tried to apologize, but her voice broke halfway. Keanu shook his head kindly. "Please," he said softly. "You don't need to say anything." And then, as Sandra approached from behind, Liam's mother gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're—" But Sandra just smiled and placed a hand on her arm. "We're just people," she said gently. "People who care." The woman's eyes filled with tears. That afternoon, the four of them sat together on the porch, sharing coffee, laughter, and quiet stories. Keanu listened as the woman spoke about her husband, how he had been a firefighter who died saving two strangers in a building collapse, how Liam still talked to his father every night before bed. As she spoke, Keanu and Sandra exchanged a look that needed no words. It was the look of two people who understood loss, but also the strange beauty of finding meaning in it. When the sun began to set, Liam leaned against Keanu's shoulder and whispered, "Can you tell me something happy before you go?" Keanu smiled faintly. "Sure, kid." What do you want to hear? Something about your sister, Liam said softly. The one who hides the light. Keanu froze. His heart skipped. He hadn't mentioned his sister to anyone, not even Sandra, not even in the car. He turned slowly toward the boy. How do you know about her? Liam just smiled and pointed at the sky. She told me. Last night, the air grew still. Even Sandra felt a chill run through her arms. The mother looked confused, but Liam seemed calm, peaceful, as if what he said was perfectly normal. Keanu's eyes glistened. He didn't know how to explain it, but deep down, he felt something. Something beyond logic. The same whisper that started everything had just found its echo. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sandra watched Keanu's face, a man caught between disbelief and wonder. She knew this wasn't just a coincidence anymore. It was the beginning of something neither of them could yet understand. The night after visiting Liam and his mother, Keanu couldn't sleep. He sat by his apartment window, the city lights flickering in the distance like quiet stars, each one holding its own memory. The boy's last words replayed again and again in his head. She told me. Last night. He tried to tell himself it was just a child's imagination. Children often said things without understanding their meaning. But something in Liam's tone had been too certain, too knowing. It had felt like truth whispered through innocence. He looked at the small photo on his shelf, his sister, smiling in the sunlight years before she got sick. She had the same warm eyes, the same calm energy that Liam carried. He had promised her once, long ago, that he would keep spreading kindness wherever he could. Maybe that's why moments like this found him. Across the city, Sandra couldn't sleep either. She kept thinking about the way Liam had spoken, not with fear, not with confusion, but with a strange, calm wisdom. She had seen many children, worked with them on movie sets, supported charities, but she had never met a child who carried such quiet depth. By morning, she texted Keanu, "Meet me at the studio cafe at 10. We need to talk." He arrived early, wearing the same gray hoodie, his hair slightly messy from another sleepless night. Sandra walked in soon after, her face thoughtful but gentle. They ordered coffee, then sat in silence for a while, both trying to find the right words. Finally, Sandra said softly, "That boy knew something about your sister." "That can't just be chance," Keanu nodded slowly. "I know, but I don't know how. I never mentioned her." "Maybe his mom did some research?" Sandra suggested. "Maybe she recognized you from interviews." "No," Keanu said quietly. "I've never spoken publicly about what she used to say to me." Those exact words. "The light never leaves you." I never said them anywhere. Sandra's expression changed. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing with curiosity. "Then what if it's something else?" Keanu smiled faintly. "You think it's a sign?" "Maybe not a sign," she said softly. "But maybe a reminder. Maybe the universe finds ways to speak through people who need healing." He looked at her, eyes tired but warm. "You always make pain sound poetic, because pain is the best teacher," she replied. They both laughed quietly. Though their hearts were still heavy, a few days passed, but neither of them could move on from that visit. Keanu went back to his usual routine, quiet mornings, motorcycle rides, training sessions. But something in him had changed. He began to feel a pull, an urge to return to that small neighborhood. Not out of curiosity, but out of something deeper, an invisible connection that kept tugging at him. One afternoon, while Sandra was on set, she received a message from Liam's mother, Claire. It said Liam hasn't been feeling well since yesterday. He keeps asking if he did something wrong. He says he dreams of the light lady who talks to him at night. Sandra immediately called Keanu. Within hours, they were at the small house again. The sky was heavy with clouds and the air smelled of rain. Claire opened the door, her face pale and tired. "He's been quiet all morning," she said. "He won't eat. He keeps drawing pictures of a woman with long hair and stars around her." Sandra glanced at Keanu. His face had gone completely still. He remembered something. His sister used to draw that same symbol when they were children. A woman surrounded by light, holding a small child's hand. She used to say it was hope. They walked into Liam's room. The boy was lying on his bed, clutching his toy car. Beside him were several drawings, each one showing the same woman in light. "Hey, buddy," Keanu said softly, kneeling beside the bed. "Remember me?" Liam opened his eyes slowly and smiled faintly. "You came back again." "Of course," Keanu said. "You're my friend now." Liam nodded weakly. "She told me you would come," Keanu frowned. "Who told you?" Liam pointed at the picture. "The light lady. She says you used to make her laugh. She said not to be scared because you'll understand soon." Sandra's breath caught. Claire looked confused, tears welling in her eyes. Keanu gently took one of the drawings. The handwriting on the bottom was shaky, but clear. "Hope never leaves." That was the same phrase his sister had written on a note the day before she passed away. He still kept that note in his journal. He felt his throat tighten. "Liam," he whispered, "does she tell you anything else?" The boy smiled softly. "She says the man who helps sad people will find his light again when he forgives himself." Keanu looked down, unable to speak. His eyes shimmered with emotion. Sandra placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him. Liam reached out and held his hand. "Don't be sad anymore," he said gently. "She's happy. She watches you ride your bike in the rain." Sandra felt goosebumps rise on her arms. Claire covered her mouth, whispering, "How does he know that?" Keanu wiped his eyes, trying to breathe steadily. "I don't know," he said softly. "But I believe him." That evening, after they left the house, Sandra and Keanu sat in his car for a long time without speaking. The rain tapped softly against the windshield, each drop echoing the rhythm of their hearts. "You think his dreams are real?" she asked quietly. Keanu didn't answer for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe real doesn't mean what we think it does." Sandra turned to him. "You look scared," he smiled faintly. "I'm not scared. I'm just seen. It's been a long time since I felt that." "By who?" she asked softly. "By someone who reminds me that love doesn't end," he said. "It just changes shape." She looked at him, and for a brief second, she saw something in his expression, something raw and beautiful. Grief, hope, and quiet faith, all living together in the same space. The next day, Sandra visited Liam and his mother again, bringing food and books. She found Claire sitting on the porch, holding her son's latest drawing. It showed 3 figures: a woman of light, a man on a motorcycle, and another woman standing beside him. Beneath them, in big letters, the boy had written, "Together they find the light." That night, Sandra called Keanu and told him about it. He didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "Maybe that's the reason we met that boy. Not to remind me of the past, but to remind both of us of what we're meant to do next." "What's that?" she asked quietly. "Help others find their light," he said simply. But before Sandra could respond, Keanu's voice shifted. Softer. Shaken. "Sandra," he said, "something strange happened just now. I found a letter in my mailbox. No name, no return address. Just one line written on it. What does it say?" she asked. He hesitated, his voice trembling. "It says, 'The boy's father knew your sister.'" The line went silent. Sandra's heart skipped. "Keanu, that's not possible." "I thought so too," he whispered. "But the handwriting, it looks exactly like hers." The connection that began with a whisper in a McDonald's was suddenly turning into something far deeper, something that tied 2 families, 2 losses and 2 souls across years of silence. And neither Keanu nor Sandra knew that the truth waiting ahead would not only challenge their faith, but change their lives forever. The next morning, the world outside Keanu's apartment was quiet, but his mind wasn't. The letter lay open on the table in front of him. It was written in delicate, looping handwriting, too familiar to ignore. Every curve of every letter looked like his sister's, and yet he knew that was impossible. He sat there for nearly an hour, reading the same 7 words again and again. The boy's father knew your sister. He had read countless scripts in his life, but none had shaken him like this one single sentence. It felt like a message from time itself, something unfinished trying to reach him. When Sandra arrived, she found him sitting in silence, a cup of cold coffee untouched beside him. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said softly. "Maybe I have," he replied, handing her the letter. She read it slowly, her brow furrowing. "The handwriting. It's beautiful." "It feels personal. It's hers," Keanu said quietly. "I'm sure of it. But that can't be possible," Sandra whispered. "She's been gone for years." "I know," he said. "But look at the ink. It's fresh." This letter was written recently. For a long time, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence like music. Finally, Sandra broke it. "There's one way to find out. We need to know who Liam's father was." Keanu hesitated. "You really think they're connected?" "I don't think," she said. "I feel it. And I've learned to trust feelings that don't make sense." So they began searching. Claire, Liam's mother, had mentioned her husband briefly, a firefighter named Mark Evans. Sandra reached out to an old journalist friend who covered rescue stories, and within a few hours, they found an archived article about Mark. He had died saving 2 strangers from a building fire 3 years earlier. The article included a photo, a tall man with kind eyes and a humble smile. Keanu stared at it for a long time. "I've seen him before," he murmured. "Where?" Sandra asked. He rubbed his forehead, trying to recall. "Years ago, before my sister got sick, she used to volunteer at a youth community center downtown. I visited her once there. There was a man fixing broken tables and repainting walls. She said his name was Mark. She told me, he's one of the good ones." Sandra leaned closer. "Keanu, what if that was the same man?" He nodded slowly. "It has to be. But why send a letter now? And who sent it?" That night, they drove together to the old community center. It had closed down years ago, but the building still stood. Faded murals covered the walls, children's drawings of stars, hearts, and the word hope written again and again. As they walked through the dusty hallways, Keanu felt memories rush back, his sister's laughter, her hands covered in paint, her soft voice saying, "The world becomes lighter when you help someone carry it." In one of the rooms, a stack of old donation records lay in a corner. Sandra began going through them carefully. The papers were yellowed and fragile. "Look at this," she said suddenly. "There's a list of volunteers from the last year the center was open. Your sister's name is here, Jennifer Reeves. And right below it," Keanu moved closer. His heart skipped. "Mark Evans." They looked at each other, speechless. The link was real. Sandra's voice trembled slightly. They must have known each other well. Maybe they worked on something together. Keanu nodded. She mentioned once that she was helping someone rebuild after a fire. Maybe it was him. As they flipped through more pages, a folded envelope fell out. Keanu picked it up carefully. There was no name, only a single word written on it. For him. Inside was a photograph. Jennifer and Mark stood side by side, smiling at the camera. Behind them was a wall painted with a phrase in bright colors. "Where light hides, love finds a way." On the back of the photo was a short note in Jennifer's handwriting. "If he ever forgets, remind him that the light never leaves." Sandra exhaled slowly. "She meant you." Keanu's eyes filled with tears. "And maybe she meant Liam too." They sat there for a long time, surrounded by silence that felt sacred. Then Sandra whispered, "Whoever sent that letter knew we'd come here." As they turned to leave, a door creaked open at the end of the hallway. An elderly man stepped out, frail, with deep lines across his face. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "We're sorry," Sandra said gently. "We used to know someone who worked here." The man studied them closely. His eyes flickered with recognition. "You're him, the actor. And she's—" Keanu interrupted softly. "We're just looking for answers." The old man hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Then maybe you should sit down." They followed him into a small office filled with dusty photographs and old certificates. He poured them tea with trembling hands. "I ran this center," he said. "Your sister and Mark were 2 of the kindest people I ever met. After she got sick, he came every week asking if there was anything he could do for her. When she passed, he left a box here. Told me to give it to someone named Keanu if he ever came back." Keanu's eyes widened. "You still have it?" The man nodded and disappeared into the back room. When he returned, he was holding a small wooden box wrapped in a faded blue cloth. "It's been waiting here for years," he said quietly. Keanu took the box in his hands. His heart was pounding. He could feel the weight of it. Not heavy, but meaningful. He opened it slowly. Inside were two things, a small notebook and a folded piece of paper. The notebook was Jennifer's. Her handwriting filled the pages with sketches, quotes, and thoughts about kindness. But the paper was different. It was a letter from Mark. The ink was smudged in places, but the words were clear. "Dear Keanu, I don't know if this will ever reach you. Your sister and I started something together, a small project to bring hope to kids who lost their parents. She called it the Light Circle. Before she passed, she told me that if anything happened to her, I should make sure her message reached you. She said you would know what to do with it. If you're reading this, then I guess I'm gone too. But maybe, just maybe, our paths crossed again through someone small. If that happens, don't walk away. It means her light still shines." Keanu's hands trembled as he finished reading. Sandra placed her hand gently over his. "The boy," she whispered. "He's the light circle. He's the connection." Keanu nodded slowly, his throat tight. And now I know why she sent that whisper back to me. He looked at the notebook again. On the last page was one sentence written in his sister's delicate handwriting. "When the child speaks, listen. It's love reminding you that you are not done yet." Outside, thunder rolled softly. The rain began again, steady and calm, as if the world itself was cleansing old pain. Sandra looked at him. "What are you going to do now?" He closed the notebook gently. "Finish what they started." But as they walked out into the rain, neither of them noticed a small figure standing across the street, a man holding an umbrella watching quietly. When the lightning flashed, he turned away and disappeared into the mist. Sandra glanced back, sensing movement. "Did you see that?" Keanu shook his head. "What?" "I thought someone was watching us," he smiled faintly. "Maybe someone always is." The rain kept falling long after they left the community center. The streets shimmered under the soft glow of streetlights, and the city felt quieter than usual, as if holding its breath for something sacred. Keanu and Sandra drove in silence. The wooden box sat between them, wrapped in the blue cloth, carrying the weight of two souls no longer alive, yet somehow still speaking. Keanu's fingers traced the edge of the box absent-mindedly. "It feels strange," he said softly. "Like I've been walking in circles, only to realize she was guiding me back all along." Sandra looked at him, her voice gentle. "Maybe that's what love does. It never really leaves. It just changes the path we walk." He smiled faintly. "You sound like her." They reached Keanu's home just before midnight. He placed the box carefully on his kitchen table, as if afraid the moment might break if handled too roughly. The sound of the rain outside mixed with the ticking of a clock, and the world seemed to pause. Sandra walked over to the window, staring at the city lights. "Do you ever wonder," she said softly, "if people we've lost still watch us? Not in some magical way, but through the lives they touched." Keanu thought for a moment. "I don't wonder," he said quietly. "I believe it." They stood in silence again, the air thick with shared grief and quiet hope. Then suddenly a soft knock echoed from the door. Both turned instantly. It was past midnight. No one ever visited at that hour. Keanu hesitated, then opened the door slowly. Standing outside was a man in his late 60s, tall with gray hair and eyes that looked tired but kind. He held an umbrella, drops of rain gliding down his coat. "Mr. Reeves?" he asked in a low, calm voice. Keanu nodded warily. "Yes," the man gave a faint smile. "My name is Samuel Evans. I'm Mark's father." Sandra's eyes widened. "Liam's grandfather?" The man nodded. "Yes, I think we need to talk." They invited him inside, and he sat down at the table, his gaze falling immediately on the wooden box. "So you found it," he said softly. "Mark told me about that box years ago. He said it belonged to someone who helped him find hope again when he was lost." "That was my sister," Keanu said quietly. "Jennifer," Samuel smiled sadly. "Yes, I met her once. She used to visit the station when Mark was recovering from a rescue accident. They became close. She helped him through his trauma. He used to say she carried light in her voice. When she got sick, he felt helpless. After she passed, he promised to continue her work. That's how the light circle began. The light circle, Sandra repeated softly. So it's real. Samuel nodded. It started small, helping families of fallen firefighters, orphaned children, people who lost everything. Mark kept her words alive. He said she once told him, kindness doesn't need to be seen to work. It just needs to be passed on. Keanu swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. That sounds like her. Samuel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out another envelope. A few weeks before Mark died, he mailed this to me. He said, if someday the actor ever crosses paths with my boy, give this to him. I didn't understand what he meant until I saw that video of you and Liam. He handed the envelope to Keanu. It was sealed with a faint trace of blue wax. Keanu opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, short and written with care. Dear Keanu, if this reaches you, it means I've kept my promise. Jennifer once said our lives are threads in one long fabric. When one thread fades, another carries its color forward. Her kindness helped me become a better man, and I tried to pass that same kindness to my son. He's 5 now. His name is Liam. If he ever meets you, it won't be by accident. It will be because love decided it was time for the circle to close. Keanu looked up, his voice breaking slightly. So the whisper. The boy's words. Samuel nodded. He doesn't remember Mark much, but Mark used to tell him bedtime stories about a man who rode a motorcycle through the rain, helping strangers without asking anything in return. He said that man was a friend of his friend, a man named Keanu. The boy grew up believing you were real. Sandra covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. That's why he recognized you, Samuel smiled faintly. Yes. When he saw you that morning, he thought his father's stories had come true. And when he whispered to you, he wasn't guessing. He was repeating a line from his father's old journal. Something Jennifer had written to him years ago. Keanu's chest tightened. The light never leaves. Samuel nodded. Exactly. The room fell silent. Outside, the rain finally began to fade, replaced by the soft sound of wind through the trees. Sandra whispered, This is unbelievable. It's like their kindness connected through time. Samuel looked at Keanu with a steady gaze. It did, and now it's your turn to keep it alive. That's what the letter meant when it said the boy's father knew your sister. They worked together, they healed each other. Now it's your turn to heal others. Keanu leaned back, closing his eyes. For years, he had done good quietly. Not for attention, but because it felt right. Yet this moment made it different. This wasn't just random kindness. It was a calling carried forward through generations. Sandra placed her hand gently on his arm. Maybe this is what she wanted all along. To remind you that the light isn't just yours to carry, it's yours to share. He opened his eyes slowly, meeting hers. And I can't do it alone, she smiled softly. You won't have to. The next day, they drove together to Liam's home. The morning sun had finally broken through after days of rain. Claire greeted them with a tired smile, and Liam ran out, waving his toy car. You came again, he shouted. Keanu laughed and lifted him into his arms. Of course. I missed you, buddy, Liam grinned. The light lady said you'd come back when the rain stopped. Keanu smiled. She was right. As they sat together on the porch, Keanu shared everything he had learned about Jennifer, about Mark, about the light circle. Claire listened, tears streaming silently down her face. He never told me all that, she said softly. I knew he volunteered, but I didn't know why it meant so much to him. Because someone showed him how powerful kindness could be, Keanu said. And then, with Sandra by his side, he made a decision that would change all their lives. He would restart the light circle, in memory of his sister and of Mark. Not as a foundation with cameras and headlines, but as a quiet movement built on genuine compassion. He looked at Liam and smiled. And you, little man, you're going to be our first ambassador of light. Liam beamed proudly, holding his toy car up like a trophy. Does that mean I help people too? Yes, Keanu said softly. You already have. That evening, as the sun began to set, Sandra watched Keanu talk to Claire and Liam under the golden sky. There was peace in his expression, the kind she hadn't seen in years. He looked lighter, freer, as if something long buried had finally been released. But even as everything seemed calm, Sandra's phone buzzed quietly. She looked down and froze. It was a message from an unknown number. Just one line. You think the circle is complete, but there's one truth left unseen. She looked up, scanning the empty street. For a brief second, she thought she saw a figure standing far off near the trees, tall, still, watching. When she blinked, the figure was gone. She turned toward Keanu, her heart beating faster. He noticed her pale face and asked softly, "What's wrong?" She hesitated, forcing a small smile. Nothing, maybe just the wind. But deep inside, she knew the story wasn't finished yet, because every circle, even one made of light, has a shadow waiting to be found. The next few days felt strangely peaceful. After months of confusion, grief, and unanswered questions, Keanu finally felt like he could breathe again. The light circle had been reborn, not as a charity, but as a quiet promise. A promise to help people who had lost their way find a spark again. He spent his mornings with Sandra planning small outreach visits for hospitals and schools, afternoons with Liam, teaching him how to draw stars and clouds, just like his Aunt Jennifer used to do. And at night, he would sit by his window, watching the city lights, whispering softly to his sister's memory. "We're doing it now. We're carrying your light. But peace never lasts long when there are still questions left unanswered." The message Sandra had received kept echoing in her mind. You think the circle is complete? But there's one truth left unseen. She hadn't told Keanu yet. She didn't want to break the calm that had finally returned. But the more she tried to forget it, the louder it became in her thoughts. 3 nights later, she received another message. No number again, no name, only a photo. It showed Jennifer standing beside Mark, the same picture they had found in the community center. But this time, there was something new. Behind them stood another figure, blurred and half hidden in shadow. Someone neither of them had noticed before. And underneath the image, a line appeared. He knows the real reason she started the light circle. Sandra's stomach tightened. She sent the photo to Keanu, and within minutes he called. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice low, tense. "It came from the same unknown number," she said. "Do you recognize the man behind them?" There was silence on the line. Then Keanu spoke slowly. "I think I do. He worked at the center, too. His name was Daniel Ward. He was a counselor there before my sister got sick. Do you know where he is now?" she asked. "No," Keanu said quietly. "But if he's still alive, he might be the one who sent those letters." The next morning, they began searching. After hours of calls and messages, they finally found a lead, a small retirement home outside the city. A man named Daniel Ward had checked in there 2 years earlier. When they arrived, the nurse led them down a quiet hallway filled with the faint scent of medicine and rain-soaked earth. They entered a small room where an old man sat by the window, sunlight spilling across his face. He turned slowly when he heard them. His eyes widened slightly, recognizing Keanu. "You came," he whispered. "Did you send the letters?" Keanu asked gently. Daniel nodded. "Yes, I had to. There were things left unsaid. Things your sister wanted you to know." Keanu pulled a chair close, Sandra beside him. "Tell me," he said quietly. The old man took a deep breath. "Your sister started the light circle because she saw too much pain around her, people helping others but never helping themselves. She wanted to heal hearts that were tired of pretending. But there was something else. Before she got sick, she told me she had a vision, not a dream, something she felt deeply. She said a small child would one day remind you of her, a child with eyes full of light. She didn't know when or how, but she was certain it would happen." Keanu's breath caught. "Liam?" Daniel nodded. "Yes," she said. "When he speaks, listen. Because through his voice, love will find its way back." Sandra felt tears gather in her eyes. "She knew," she whispered. "She always knew," Daniel said softly. "And Mark. He was part of that vision, too. They met because of her illness, but their connection went deeper. They both believed that kindness is never random. It's placed in people like seeds waiting for light. Keanu lowered his head, his voice trembling. "Why didn't she tell me?" Daniel smiled sadly. "Because she didn't want you to live in her shadow. She wanted you to live in her light." The room went quiet. Outside, birds sang faintly, and for a moment time felt suspended. Then Daniel said something that made both of them still. "Before she passed, she gave me one last message for you," she said. "Tell my brother that when he meets the woman who carries calm like the ocean, he'll know it's time." Keanu looked up slowly. "The woman who carries calm?" Daniel smiled gently, his eyes glancing toward Sandra. "You already found her?" Sandra froze, tears sliding down her cheeks. Keanu turned to her, eyes soft, vulnerable, understanding dawning in his silence. Daniel leaned back, closing his eyes. The circle was never just about her and Mark. It was about all of you. It was meant to bring together every heart that still believes in quiet goodness. Now it's your turn to continue it. A few minutes later, the nurse entered to check on him. Daniel was asleep, a peaceful smile on his face. Keanu and Sandra stepped outside into the late afternoon light. The air smelled of wet grass and blooming flowers. They stood side by side, saying nothing for a long while. Then Sandra spoke softly. She saw this before it even happened. "Maybe she didn't see it," Keanu said, looking up at the sky. "Maybe she made it happen." The wind shifted gently, brushing against their faces, and in that silent breeze, they both felt something. A warmth that wasn't from the sun, a quiet presence that wrapped around them like a soft embrace. Later that evening, they returned to Liam's house. Claire greeted them with her usual warmth, and Liam ran out, his toy car in hand. "I had another dream," he said excitedly. The light lady said she's proud. She said the circle is shining again. Keanu knelt down, smiling through tears. "Then let's make it shine even brighter." Liam giggled and placed his small hand over Keanu's heart. "She says you found the calm lady too." Sandra laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "Smart kid." "No," Liam said seriously. "She said you're both the light now." As the sun set behind them, painting the sky in soft gold and pink, Keanu looked at Sandra, the woman who had stood beside him through every storm. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man haunted by loss. He felt whole. The wind carried the scent of rain and wild flowers, and somewhere in the fading light, it almost felt like a whisper. Jennifer's voice, soft and clear. "The light never leaves you. It just waits until you remember where to look." Keanu closed his eyes, letting that truth sink deep into his soul. The boy, the woman, the lost friend, the sister, all threads woven together by love, crossing years and pain, forming one endless circle that began with a whisper in a McDonald's and ended with a family reborn in kindness. As the last light of the day faded into dusk, Keanu whispered softly, "Thank you, Jen." And somewhere beyond sight, a quiet laughter echoed in the wind, full of peace, full of light, full of home.